We're seeing more mid-sized builders in that kind of segment, opening themselves up for sale, saying, look, I'm open to a conversation that you can acquire me. And I think part of it is just this uncertainty. And even since the pandemic, just this kind of roller coaster economy we've been on, they're like, look, I just want to get out. I mean, I'm done with this, and I'll go be a consultant or I'll maybe work for another builder, but I don't want my own company anymore. It's too hard. Large builders are taking advantage of that. It's much more competitive.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
What happens when the biggest builders in America start swallowing up the little ones whole? When AI is changing construction faster than most builders can adapt? When builders are suddenly competing against consolidation, regulation, labor shortages, institutional capital, and even data centers for land and resources? Hello, my friend. In this week's episode, I get to sit down with Rich Binsacca, who's the editorial director of Pro Builder, one of the most respected voices in home building today. For decades, Rich has had a front row seat to the evolution of American home building, from market booms and crashes to the rise of mega builders, AI, offsite construction, and the changing psychology of buyers today. Here are just a few of the things that we spoke about in this conversation. Why many smaller builders may struggle over the next 10 years. The real reason consolidation is accelerating across the industry. How the customer experience is becoming the ultimate competitive advantage. Why AI and technology adoption are no longer optional for builders. The growing collision between housing, regulation, labor shortages, and data centers. What today's buyers actually want versus what builders think they want, and so much more. And on that topic of so much more, I've got something I need to ask you. Please, with a click of your mouse, subscribe, like, and share to the podcast. That simple action, subscribe, like, and share, will help take our little puppet show of a podcast and get it into the algorithms so more builders like you can see what we're doing here at Builder Straight Talk. There's never any advertising, just great stories from successful builders that you can glean from, hopefully to become successful too. So once again, with a click of your mouse, subscribe, like, and share. And without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Rich Binsacca. Well, Rich, I'm excited to have you on today's call. And let me do a bit of a prep here. When I look at what you're doing and Pro Builder, I kind of make the analogy that you guys are like O'Hare Airport in Chicago. And that is by volume the largest inbound, outbound airport in the USA. They handle almost 900,000 planes per year. And like you've got this vantage that you can see what's taking off. You can see what's landing. And when you look down on the screen, you can almost predict the future because you can see so far ahead. So I'm excited about what you bring to the table today in terms of that vantage point that you have. And I think our builders are going to glean a lot from this conversation. So I'm setting you up for a high standard, my friend. I hope you can deliver the goods.
I hope so. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to this. Yeah.
Before you got into Pro Builder, let's go back a step. Like, how did you even decide that journalism, because we can call you a journalist, was something that you wanted to pursue? Where did that all take place?
Oh man. Well, I can tell you, as a kid, I pored over the newspaper. I would start and spend most of my time in the sports section. As a kid, I wanted to be a sports writer. So I would read and follow the teams that I wanted, that were in my, where I lived. I lived in the Bay Area, East Bay Area. So, the Oakland Raiders, Oakland A's, Golden State Warriors, those were my teams. And so I would follow them, very closely and read everything about them, read everything about sports. I got Sports Illustrated when I was 9 and kept it for 25 years. So I wanted to be a sports writer. That really probably was the bug, the seed of it. And as I went through grade school, junior high, high school, I was writing all the time. I was writing short stories. I was writing, for the school newspaper. Really was kind of my passion. I really liked journalism. I liked the way that, I could craft stories that way. There was a formula to it to a certain degree in news, especially, that I was able to latch onto and learn from. And then got an opportunity in my senior year in high school to be an intern at the kind of the area daily newspaper, and was put on the automotive beat actually. I didn't get to choose my beat, but I was put on the automotive beat and worked with an editor of that section of the newspaper, and really learned a lot about the discipline of especially newspaper journalism, and was eventually able to write features for that piece, or for that section. Yeah, really was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And so I went to school at the University of Missouri Columbia, and their journalism school is and was then one of the top ones in the country. And so I kind of surprised my parents by telling them I wanted to go to Mizzou from Northern California. They weren't really ready for that, but I told them why, and they respected it. And they were very supportive of me pursuing writing career or a journalism career. So that was great of them to kind of give me the okay to go to Mizzou. At that school, and I believe that's still the case, is that you go through a general education for 2 years, and then you have to qualify based on your grades and other things to get into the journalism school as a junior. And I was able to do that. I wrote for an off-campus newspaper. I wrote for kind of an independent lifestyle magazine while I was there, while I was waiting to get on the staff of the newspaper, which served the entire town of Columbia. And in fact, there was a competitive daily also in Columbia, and so was able to get on that beat and wrote sports for a semester. No, a year actually. My junior year, I wrote sports. I wrote for the sports section, and discovered that sports writing was not really a lifestyle I wanted, and so switched to features and the weekly magazine department of the paper, and was able to write features for them. So a little out of the news realm, but more into the kind of feature writing, and that was a good step for me. And I put myself through school on construction sites. So I learned a lot about residential construction and remodeling, especially. Got to work with some really talented folks. Kind of learned the process and the routine of building and remodeling. So I applied both of those passions and experiences to get a job in real estate journalism, housing journalism, right out of college. So been pretty much doing that ever since.
Wow. So how many years has that been?
I've been at Pro Builder since 2018, but I started at actually another housing magazine, Builder Magazine. I started in 1987, the summer of 1987. Was there for 4 years, and then I was a freelance journalist for, well, I'll bounce around a little bit, but as a freelance journalist for basically 20 years, and then did some other things. Worked for a company in Pittsburgh on a marketing program in Saudi Arabia for 4 years, and then kind of found myself like looking for the next thing. And this job opened up. I really wasn't thinking I would get back into magazine journalism for being gone so long and not really managing a team or anything like that. But I'd written for Pro Builder, was writing for Pro Builder as a freelancer, and so they offered me the job of editor in chief in 2018. And then I was promoted to editorial director in 2020 when my boss retired. And then, have been in that position or a variation of that position since.
Wow. When you talked about being a sports writer, the younger people probably have to Google this, but I think of The Odd Couple. And what was it? What were the
Felix
two
Unger.
characters? I'm having a brain.
Felix Unger was the sports writer. Yeah.
Was it Felix or the other guy?
Oh no,
that smoked
Felix.
the
I'm
cigars
sorry.
all the time?
It was Oscar Madison was the sports writer.
That's
Yeah.
the one. That's the
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Right.
Smoky
Felix was
cigars and poker.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly. And so it was great. Yeah.
The fact that you got to work in the field, like in construction, that's pretty fascinating too, that you already had the dust in your pen, if you will, and like the die is cast that this is what you're going to be doing. Was there ever a concern that media, by and large, has it ever been a print magazine first? Let's go there. Or has it always been digital, Pro Builder?
Oh, Pro Builder's always been a print magazine. It's been a print magazine since 1936. So we're in our 90th year this year. It's been owned by various publishers, but it's continued on. And it went from a monthly to a bi-monthly now, 6 times a year. And we did that right after the pandemic. It's still a print book. And obviously we've expanded into the web and social and other digital mediums, but it's still at its foundation a magazine.
Do you find the fact that you guys are so niche orientated, that you're in the build space, is that kind of kept the dragons away, if you will? Because other print has been struggling to be relevant, to keep advertising coming in, to keep the lights on. Do you find it's easier because you are so niche specific and respected?
I don't think it's the niche so much. I think it's more and I like to think it's the respect. And I think the fact that we publish 6 times a year, whereas our competitors only 4 times a year, they went from a monthly down to 4. And I think having at least that level of frequency helps in terms of print advertisers. Now, obviously, and I don't get involved in this. We have a sales team that does this, but we have a number of opportunities in digital events, the print, e-newsletters, all different types of ways that we communicate with our audience for advertisers to find their niche, find their place, and reach an audience. So I think that having that breadth and having a reputation and a good reputation among our audience for serving them and being kind of a general interest, if you will. We're not a niche in terms of just design or just construction. I mean, we cover the industry. I think our affiliation with the National Association of Home Builders as their official media partner helps too. I think builders now get our magazine every other month through that affiliation, that partnership. So that's helped a lot too to kind of solidify us as the industry magazine. I'd like to think that we are.
In terms of the breakdown of your subscribers, is it an equal mix of, let's say, leadership, and then you've got fix and flip, spec builders, custom builders? Is it kind of equal across the board, or do you find there's a predominance leaning more one way than the other?
Well, by far, it's single family home builders across the country.
Okay.
I'd say a good fifth of our audience is custom builders, which is reflective of the industry or about reflective of the industry from a standpoint of the number of firms that are there and the homes that they build. I mean, the typical, at least NAHB member, and this is the only data I really have, is their membership, their builder membership builds about 5 to 6 homes a year. So that's not necessarily custom, but it's certainly small volume to custom. And then the rest of them are, the rest of the builders are middle market. Obviously, we go all the way up to DR Horton and Lennar at 80 plus thousand units a year. But I think that most of our builders are in the 100 to 400 range per year. Most of our audience in terms of builders, and then of course we have a certain amount of remodelers or builders who do remodeling. We have general contractors, subcontractors, developers, architects, design professionals. So the whole spectrum of the industry is part of our audience, but it's primarily home builders, and that's where we kind of focus our attention.
Well, let's tap into some of that wealth of experience that you guys have accumulated along the way. Have you noticed through all the interviews, the articles that you've written, is there any kind of what I call it, a pattern recognition that you see successful builders are implementing consistently versus the ones that aren't? Like, are there any trends or any similarities, anything that builders listening in can take away that you've seen that makes a builder successful versus the ones that are struggling?
Well, I think the things that are in their control, outside of, say, interest rates or even industry consolidation in their markets, which we're seeing a lot of, and really an uptick in the last 6 months, frankly, among some larger builders. But I think that the best builders that I know are committed to a culture, and typically that culture is customer focused, customer centric. They really do a great job, and this is operation wide, taking care of their customers and making sure that they deliver a high quality product that meets and exceeds their expectations and deliver services that do that. I think, the best builders have committed resources uh, to not only reinforce and kind of nurture that culture, but also, to cover all the bases adequately. And the ones that are struggling, I think, are ones that ask too much of too few and expect, great results. I also think that there's and it's funny when we talk about innovation and we talk about, getting better, builders across the board tell us that they want to improve operationally, but they don't seem to make a lot of moves to do that. And I think builders that are on, not so much the bleeding edge, but certainly the leading edge of innovation, integrating AI, integrating business software, understanding the role of data and how it can help them and understanding how to use it and then applying it, which is the big kind of hurdle. I mean, you might have great data, you might be able to analyze it well, but if you don't use it, then what good was it? So I think that when you talk about that kind of thing, they're strategic, they have a great culture, they take care of their customers, they build a good product. Those are kind of the building blocks of a great builder. And there's a lot of them out there. A lot of them I don't even know, but there's a good, you know, 50 of them that I could probably name that I think are just really doing it right.
Right now, from the interviews that I've done with many builders from coast to coast, some are really having a tough time with buyers right now. It seems that things have slowed down in their market depending where they are. And to compete, they're playing the game of slashing prices, trying to compete on interest rates. And it seems like that's a spiral or a quick way to the bottom. Are there any insights that you can share that you've seen builders implement that aren't competing on price, that aren't, what's the word I'm looking for? The bells and whistles. They're still staying true to building a good quality product, and somehow they're still winning.
Yeah, it's tough right now. I'll be honest. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, and I think it's affecting every builder. I mean, we just finished our latest top 200, which ranks the top builders by revenue every year. And those are the top, saw drops in revenue. They saw drops in production. Not a lot. I mean, over the 200, they dropped about 3% in terms of production and revenue, but which is billions of dollars, frankly, but it's not, it's still 3%. I think that for builders that, you know, eh, are looking to compete, again, I think if they forged a reputation for doing well in their market, they're pretty much insulated. I mean, they can leverage that, and they can say, look, there might be a large production builder, a giant national down the street, or two or three that are undercutting us on price, but we beat them on customer service. We beat them on construction quality. We beat them on warranty and things like that. And I think that it's all about how you message yourself and how you, again, message that culture that you have that is customer centric, because you're in your local market, and I think you need to take advantage of the fact that you are part of that community, and it's not just someone who's coming in because they've got a land position or they want to get a market there because your market's hot. You've been there for a while, and you can leverage that with your customers. I think also, you know uh, competing on price is I think for most builders, at least if they have nationals in their market or large regionals in their market who are price driven and are kind of driving that price, maybe even controlling that price with their land holdings and how much production they're doing. I think that you've got to find a niche that's going to be profitable for you, and if that means changing your product up, if that means building smaller projects on infill lots, if it means diversifying into maybe some custom work or some remodeling work, I think that's what you have to do if you want to maintain any kind of profitability in your market.
I'm seeing a lot of consolidation where the big builders are coming in and buying the guys that are successful players. And again, just they're increasing their size as a result of it. Do you see that pressure will ultimately, how do I say, change the playing field in such a way that it's going to be predominantly the big guys and the smaller guys will find it very difficult to compete? Or is there always going to be a place for the smaller independent builder?
Well, I think there'll always be a place. I mean, there's just too many homes that need to be built in too many markets where people live and want to live. I think what you're seeing is big builders are definitely consolidating for one of two reasons, or one of three reasons. One, they want to get into a market that they think is like a secondary, or not so much a tertiary market, but a hot secondary market. So you're looking at something like Huntsville or Nashville, even, or something in the and even Boise to some degree, and they're looking to get in there so that they can have some sort of, because I think that people are going there. That's where the jobs are. That's where people want to live, and so they're following that. The other thing is they want land, and so if they find a builder who's not so much successful, although that's part of it, but has attractive land holdings in somewhere where they want to build and want to put up an operation or have an operation, then they'll look to merge or acquire them. And I think the other thing is just you know looking to continually just basically feed the machine. And these are publicly held builders. They have a responsibility to shareholders. They have to show a profit. They have to show growth. And so there's just a pressure there to continue to grow in any way. I think that for the small volume builder who's doing maybe something like 6 to 50 units a year, again, if you can find your niche outside of competing with them on price, I think you're going to be okay. If you're trying to compete with them on price at a volume of 250 to 500, that's a lot more difficult. And to be honest, we're seeing more mid-sized builders of that in that kind of segment, opening themselves up for sale, saying, "Look, I'm open to a conversation that you can acquire me." And I think part of it is just this uncertainty and even since the pandemic, just this kind of roller coaster economy we've been on, that are like, look, I just want to get out. I mean, I'm done with this, and I'll go be a consultant, or I'll maybe work for another builder, but I don't want my own company anymore. It's too hard. And so, but large builders are taking advantage of that. It's much more competitive, um, and it's much more. I mean, the prices of those, or the cost to acquire, are going up because these builders are like, look, I'm looking to sell, and builders are competing for them.
That looking to sell philosophy, the problem is the builder has to have something he can sell. And many have created a job for themselves. They haven't really built a sustainable business because they're the bookkeeper, they're going out doing estimates or doing repair, like they're doing it all. And so they can't pull themselves out of the business and say, here's what I have. Are you finding that more builders are starting to realize that they have to run a business? And what I mean by that, it's like Michael Gerber and the E Myth. I have to be working on my business versus being in it because I've created a job versus a tangible asset that I can sell down the road.
Well, I think that's what we would would say is the right path to work on your business as much as you work, or more so than you work in your business. I think that's a lot easier said than done, frankly, like a lot of things in life and in housing. I mean, I think that, when it's just you or your mom and pop, which frankly is a lot of builders out there, I think they just can't pick their head up. It's really, really difficult to do that, and really know where to go once you do. Like, you might pick your head up and go, okay, I'm going to start working on the business, and you don't even really know where to start because you're doing everything, and everything's just a firestorm coming at you. And so you've got to kind of, not just find the time, but really find the pinch point. So I think, yes, but I don't think those are the builders that are necessarily targets of larger builders, or even think that they would be acquired by a larger builder, because they are so small, because they don't really have an operation in place. I think larger builders, or any builder who's looking to acquire another builder, is looking for a good operational infrastructure, land position, maybe a niche that builder's not in yet, that they want to get in, they see as an opportunity, but would rather just take somebody else's idea and use it, versus, kind of competing with them. So I think they're looking to go after, solid businesses, ones that are working on, that have people that are working on the business in addition to being in the business. And the other guys are just going to fall away. I mean, I just don't think that, if they don't pick their head up, that they're just not going to be in business for very long.
Yeah. The one thing you kind of touched on, the big guy, the David versus the Goliath story, is that the smaller builders have the ability to, as you said, customer service is key for them. And they can take the time to have that personal touch with their clients. The other is the follow up when something goes wrong, they get there quickly and they own it. Versus, I find some of the bigger builders will rely on warranty, different companies to step in and do it for them. And then they've lost that communication between the buyer and the builder. And your biggest advocate, you would think, is the person that you just built a home for, because they'll be your raving fan. So in terms of advertising, you would think that's also the easiest source. Make these people happy because they'll tell other people that I'm a great builder.
Yeah, I think, and this is painting a really broad brush, but I think that when you get up into the echelon of the top 30 builders, top 40 builders, where they're building thousands of units a year, especially, at the top 10, 15, I think it's just a churn business. I'm sure there's exceptions. I think that some markets they're really good, and some markets they're just really bad. But to be efficient in such a bureaucracy of that, I mean, that's a huge. Those are Fortune 500 companies. Those aren't, those are big companies with, thousands of employees across the country. It's a difficult animal to wrangle unless you have, centralized control or centralized systems. And sometimes those systems just aren't appropriate for, kind of the customer service that you'd think, or that maybe even want to provide to a homeowner. I think they do defer to their subcontractors. And I think that they typically will go for the lowest price subcontractor, which means that that person's either, not necessarily the best, but maybe not the best business either, not the best at customer service, not the best at getting out there. And they rely on them to build their homes, which aren't necessarily built to the highest quality. So you're going to have problems on the back end. You're going to have service calls when the home's handed over and you're into your, first month, first 6 months, a year. And so it's just a different business model. And I think it has to be a different approach to how you deal with customers. I think when you're smaller and you're local and you've got a dedicated, warranty team or warranty person that's that's watchdogging everyone and meets these people personally, and there's a salesperson that passes the baton carefully and considerably to the construction, which passes it on to warranty or post occupancy, then you've got a breadcrumb trail that the homeowner can rely on and say, okay, yeah, this company took care of me all the way through this process, and I'm relying on them and trust them to take care of me, the first year or so of this ownership. So yeah, I think again, it's a broad brush. Builders across the board do it poorly. They just do because they don't know how or they don't have the people. But I think that again, in general, I think that smaller volume builders, again, who have a great culture and a great operational setup, are able to treat their customers on a one-to-one basis versus kind of a churn of, well, we just sold, 500 homes today. It's just, I can't even imagine trying to wrangle that.
Yeah. And at that point, you've got a board of directors that you're beholden to. You've got stock holders. It's, as you said, a completely different beast. One of the things that I found really fascinating by interviewing people like you, Rich, it's a learning experience for me. And like I thoroughly enjoy it. And the things that I didn't know that I didn't know. But one of them is the bigger builders become a target for class action suits. And I didn't know that this was even a thing. And one of the insurance companies that I interviewed said that what a lawyer will do, they'll hire a company to literally go out and door knock on homes that have just been built, and they know that there's a flaw or something within that particular model that the builder's been doing, and they try to wrangle enough people to do a class action. Have you written about any of that in Pro Builder?
We haven't written about that in particular. I will say that that would take to do it well would take a lot of resources that frankly I just don't have. I did read a story recently where a team of journalists in the construction space, not someone that we really compete with, more of an online brand or whatever, but a really good, thorough piece. Probably took them a couple of years to do it, to get to, talking about construction quality, talking about warranty, talking about some of these, legal fights. And I mean, when you build so many homes, I think you've got so many customers and you're just going to have a volume of people that are upset or not happy with what you're doing. And I think that, again, it's a different culture, a different business model than something that you'd prefer maybe as a customer. But I think that, it's something that we keep an eye on. We do talk about construction quality a lot. We try to be more like, this is what you should do in terms of building properly, following building science principles, following best practices. And we talk a lot about, again, culture, about customer service, about sales and marketing, and kind of how you portray yourself and how you pass that baton through the process. So we're really focused more on builders who are looking, again, to get better rather than necessarily, holding up builders that, are suffering or are the brunt of criticism or the brunt of class action lawsuits. I think, there's a fine line. Do I think that those homes are built well? No, not as well, not as well as they could be. Let's put it that way. I think that, so they kind of deserve some criticism and they're going to have some problems. But I also think there's, you can't, there's two sides at least to every story. And I think if you looked at from a legal standpoint or from a lawyer standpoint, it's kind of easy pickings, right? It's like, look, we know these homes probably have some problems. Let's go after it and see if we can get some money out of them. I think that, and the other thing is, as public home builders, even though I have relationships with most of them, if not with the CEO, then certainly with somebody in the organization, they would defer to their legal team to talk to me, and probably the answer would be, we have no comment. We're not going to talk about this. It's either ongoing litigation or it's just something that we're going to give you a boilerplate answer and it's not going to satisfy you, and it's not really going to pay off for me to say that. It's just not worth the effort, frankly, to kind of go down those roads rather than going on a positive road and saying, this is how, other builders who do it right are doing it, and this is a model to follow.
In terms of doing it right, a builder that I just interviewed recently is playing with video. And when I say video, he's got his smartphone and is basically taking the prospective client on the journey of what the home is going to be as it unfolds. And they're finding a bunch of things are happening. One is the audience is identifying with that builder, and there's that human connection that's taking place. So I'm not buying from a company. I'm buying from this guy who happens to be the owner of the company. I'm learning about my home as it's being built. Are you seeing more of that builders are experimenting with video? And pushing the envelope, if you will, not just relying on signs and the conventional advertising.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of push pull. I think that, when we were in the pandemic, they kind of had to the ones that weren't had to kind of get savvy and get good at doing that, doing kind of, walking through somebody's home when you couldn't get together to walk through it in person, right? So it's like, here's your home and we're going to walk through it with you. Or here's a home and this is how we build and this is what we do. And I think that there were a lot of builders who took advantage of that and were able to do their marketing and sales efforts through that, but the pendulum's always swinging, right? So it could be something where, and it does for media too, where it's like, well, the hot new thing is e-newsletters or the hot new thing is podcasts or whatever. And it's like, is that pendulum going to swing back to, well, the hot new thing or the thing that people really want now is a simpler thing. They just want the print magazine. They just want to read, they just want to get something in the mail and sit down with it and read it, right? And that's where they're going to get their information. So I think that, from a video specific standpoint, I think builders are savvy. I think they're getting even more savvy and more into kind of virtual presentations of their product where there are virtual walkthroughs. There's virtual design aspects where you can, show somebody or even show a planning department if you're going to do, if you're up against, some resistance or just approvals process and show them exactly what you're going to do and make changes and make adjustments, and it automatically changes the cost of the building depending on what you do and the materials list and the schedule. All that stuff is all integrated, and so you can show somebody their home in a virtual 3D environment, have them basically put themselves in the space and see it and go, yeah, that's great, but can we move that? Can we change that? I have a bigger couch that's going to not fit there. Okay, yeah, we can do some things like that, or figure it out, get another model, get another plan. So I think that's where I see builders getting much more sophisticated. I think I love the personal touch of an iPhone. I mean, I think, from a standpoint of it's not high production value, but that's relatable, right? If it's too high production value, people are going to go, well, that's just somebody, professional put that together. But no, this builder walking through and his phone's kind of, moving around as he's walking and he's not necessarily holding up to his face all the time. It's like, it's charming, frankly. And it's like, that's personal, that's human. And I think people relate to that. So I like it. If they're doing it, I think it's a good move.
Yeah, prior to COVID, I was teaching realtors across North America how to get over the fear of I'm too fat, too hairy, too ugly, to actually hit the record button on their phone and do it. And that was a big stumbling block, is this self-esteem issue.
Yeah.
And I would tell them, you better laugh at yourself because there's an army of people that are waiting to do it. So you might as well be the first one on that parade.
Right.
And to your point about the shaky video, it reminds me of, and maybe you saw this way back in the day, there was a movie called The Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And it was this shaky black and white film, and it looked like it was, run and gun type thing. And I forget the numbers, but it was something along the line of it cost them 20 grand to produce, but netted something like $10 million. Like the return to investment was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it was because of this shaky, I feel like I'm part of the journey approach.
Yeah.
And the builders that are tapping into that are making that connection with their buyers because they're not trying to be something that they're not. And the biggest letdown, if you will, is when you're seeing somebody in their really slick advertising out front of a car that's not theirs. And then when you finally meet them, there's that disconnect. And we like to work with people we know, like, and trust. That trust factor has been eliminated. But if you can be the goof you are on camera and then you show up being that same person, that's what they love.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is that, for most people, building a home is a mystery. They don't know construction. It's a very complex business. It's a very complex, I mean, when you really break it down, it's hard work. It is visible, unlike any other product that is built, right? Because it's just out there. It's in the middle of a development or whatever. So you can see it, but you really don't understand it. And I think when a builder does kind of, again, kind of take the air out of the balloon and say, look, I'm not going to have an ego about this. I want people to know how I build their home and what pieces are part of it. Now, obviously, we can go live now, and I think builders who are, able to and willing to kind of do a true walkthrough and really talk to people about how the home is built and why there's a header there and what a header is and all that kind of stuff. I think people just, again, to your point, start to build a trust in this person. This is a builder who's willing to kind of not just put himself out there or herself out there, but really explain to me in my language how my house is going together and why they do the things they do. And I think that's a tremendous benefit. Again, kind of as a counter to a company that's got, 40 homes in the air at one time and is just wailing away, and you're going to get your home when it's finished, and maybe you have a couple of walkthroughs, but nobody's really talking to you about it. It's just, hey, this is what we have to do. We have to give you a walkthrough at frame, and then we'll give you a walkthrough at before move in, and that's it.
There's a builder in Texas, Cody Clark Custom Homes, and he's nailed this, and he's got his team is actually doing the same thing where they're doing walkthroughs, they're goofing around, they're showing how things are putting together or being put together, and you feel like you're part of the family over time. So,
Yeah.
that's a good example if people want to see it. Let me push back to something you said earlier. In terms of marketplaces right now, if I were to ask you, let's say, what are the 5 go-to places in terms of where the activity is happening as of today? And then the next question logically would be, are there any well-kept secrets that are starting to develop that builders are catching on to?
Well, the top 5 to 10 markets simply by volume are obvious. I mean, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Austin, those Phoenix are just markets that, LA, DC to some degree, I think are just always in that, they've always got the most, permits every month and continue to be in that top level. I think when you get down to, and I don't even know if they're really considered secondary markets anymore, but I think, again, I mentioned Huntsville. I think that Charlotte, Nashville, Boise kind of went through a COVID boom, but they've they have no problem with sprawl. They'll just keep going because there's nothing but desert in there in the Treasure Valley. So they'll keep going. And it's an attractive place to be. I raised my kids there. I was there for 20 years and loved it. And I can see why people flock to that market. I think you look at someone like, maybe places that people don't think about as often or don't know. They know Seattle, but they don't necessarily know Tacoma. They know the Bay Area, but they may not know Sacramento very well, or the kind of that Central Valley area. I think, Salt Lake City is a good market. So yeah, I think, Columbus, Ohio has seen a lot of growth in the past year, specifically with some multifamily that they're building there to kind of make home housing more affordable for its residents. So yeah, I mean, the Texas markets are obvious. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think those are the ones that top ahead, I would say are, ones that I would keep an eye on for sure.
Okay, cool. In terms of buyers, let's call it the atypical buyer, have you noticed that there's a change in what they're looking for, the psychology of a buyer, and how a builder has to approach them? Like once upon a time, when we look at post-war homes, like you had the nuclear family, if you will, they had a car, they could afford a place. It's like, oh, okay, how is it that they could afford a home back then and we can't now? Well, part of that is the expectations have changed from a little 700 square foot home to it has to be 3,000. So have you noticed any kind of trends within what buyers are doing in buyer behavior?
Well, I think the one fundamental thing that's changed, and it's changed for all of us, every consumer, is that we're much more retail focused. We're much more, our expectations are to have, you know, again, back to customer service, kind of this white glove, kind of, this is a big investment. This is probably the biggest investment I'll make in my lifetime, and I expect you to treat me really well. And they have learned, as retail did a long time ago, that if you create a great experience, you're going to create happy customers and loyal customers, right? So I think that, builders who have been adept at adapting to that kind of expectation, and maybe it's not white glove per se as much as, say, a premium hotel brand or a premium, perfume brand or jewelry brand does, or a car brand. But I think that, builders who have been responsive to higher expectations for how customers are treated are ahead of the game. I think that, the other thing that we're seeing is, because of the affordability issue, that there's more buyers, especially younger buyers, and I'll qualify that a little bit, but most of the younger buyers are like, look, I don't know if I'm ever going to afford something to live in, to buy, but I do like good stuff. I like a highly appointed place that's going to be durable. So, look at the built for rent market. They don't want to live in an apartment per se. They want to live in a single family home or a duplex or a townhome, but they want it to be something they can afford, which they typically can, because they're probably higher earners, but they don't have the wherewithal to get into a for sale house. So they'll go to a good built for rent model. I think that the other thing is they're willing to go smaller. smaller lots, smaller footprints. I don't think it's no longer, a 2 and 3 at 3,000 square feet. I think it's, I think it's more, give me, 2,000 square feet and 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths and a nice little yard in the back, little yard, that's fine. And I'm happy. And I can get into that, and that's fine. Even if I have a kid or two, I've still got the room to do that, and I can afford that, and I'm getting into the market. I think, there obviously is a contingent of folks, and this is true of the market, it's true of society, where you've got this disparate and widening gap of people who can afford the best of the best and get 5,000 to 7,000 square foot homes. Those homes are still being built, and they're being built for, and selling for 3, 4, 5, $6 million. And then you've got people who are just like, I would just love to have an 800 foot or 600 square foot studio apartment that is clean and well built, and I can just sleep and kind of cook there. I'm going to eat out mostly or order in. I don't really care, but I'll entertain with my friends out, not in my apartment. But I want to, I'm willing to do that because it's not as important to me anymore. I will say this, and what I want to circle back on is I remember 10, 15 years ago, we were talking about millennials having the same kind of attitude of, they weren't at that time, they weren't married, they were either single or couples, and they were, you know, considering themselves kind of transient, where they could, kind of move from job to job, and they weren't really looking to settle down. And then they got married, had kids, found a job, a career that they really liked. And then they were like, well, now I want a single family home. It's like, well, we weren't expecting that. That wasn't what something that we were prepared to build for you. So when you look at Gen Z now, it's kind of the same narrative. And I'm just waiting for them to kind of go through the same life changes and say, well, no, we still want single family homes. Right now we don't, but in 10 years, 15 years, when we're maturing and we've got maybe a kid or two, it's like, yeah, I want a yard. I want a single family home. So um, it's interesting how that narrative changes as they get older and get into different life stages.
I recently interviewed a senior vice president of Bridge Tower Homes, and they do built to rent, and they're starting up a new division, which is now built for sale. One of the unique aspects about their rental department was they were trying to build communities. And
Mhm.
it wasn't these little cookie cutter shoe boxes. They actually were focused on what the customer experience would be. And the question I posed was, okay, guys, you're doing the rental side, and obviously it's working well for you. But then now you've been tempted to the dark side of producing homes that people will actually want to buy. Is there something in the middle that we're missing? And when I think of like condos, for example, you can have rent to own programs. And this is what we did back in the day when interest rates were 17, 18%. Do you see that there's room for that kind of animal where the builders are focused on building something and it becomes some kind of formula or calculation based on here's how much you're putting down and you have the opportunity now to buy this place at the end? Kind of like when you lease a car in the buyout. Do you see that having a place right now to solve this dilemma that we have for getting more younger people into the market?
Well, I think it's certainly a one solution or one opportunity, one approach, and we've seen it a little bit. I think the difference for me, or the hitch, is that, typically, if you build a house for sale and you make the sale and you get through the warranty year, you're out. You just, it's done. And even for built to rent, unless you're the developer or you have a division or a part of your company that can basically operate that rental, whether it's a single house or a community, especially a community, and you're collecting rent and whatever, that's a different business model. You've got to have a different setup for, maintenance, and a different setup for, repair, and well beyond a warranty, because you own the house. Somebody's just renting it from you. So it's like any other landlord, lease deal. And that's a totally different business model than a builder who's selling a home and moving on to the next home to build and sell. When you talk about lease to own, again, that is obviously more of it's that hybrid. It's more of I still own the home and I'm leasing it to you, but someday I'm going to have to sell it to you, or I will sell it to you. I'm agreeing to that. But that's a long tail for a lot of builders of for sale homes to consider, right? It's just like, I don't want to be in the business of managing that property for however long this is going to go. Now you look at that the executive order that came across in January, and some of the bill in Congress now, the housing bill in Congress that's being kind of tossed back and forth between the House and the Senate. And they're taught one component of that in the executive order was that it was going to require that, well, it was to stop industrial investors from buying homes and turning them into rentals instead of selling them. So basically taking for sale homes off the market, which I get, but that's a small percentage of what's happening here. I mean, it's kind of like a dog whistle. Like it's like, oh, institutional investors are buying up homes. Well, they are, but they're not at any kind of volume that's really affecting the market all that much. The upshot is that rental homes, even built to rent and newer built to rent homes, would have to be sold within 7 years, which takes those missing middle kind of homes off the market and makes them something that has to be sold. One, you're asking operators to now be salespeople, and that's not what they do. The builder of that home, unless he still owns it, is not in the picture anymore. So they're not selling it. So, you just got to put it on the market and get a real estate agent and sell that house. And, it's been it's just, I think it's too much manipulation. I think you've got to let the market kind of figure out, and lease-to-own is one opportunity. I think tear downs and rebuilds and infill communities is another. I think multifamily definitely has a place in affordable housing. I think that just building smaller and cluster housing is another. Each market, from both a consumer and a construction and a regulatory standpoint, has to figure out what's best for their community and what they're willing to do to create more housing, if in fact they feel like they want more housing. And that's always been kind of the bugaboo, is that you've got politicians saying, I want more housing in my community because housing prices are out of control. But then they just put up these barriers for builders that don't allow them to build affordable housing, or housing that's affordable to build and then sell. It's just this dilemma that we're in. That's the real issue, I think, is that, these buy right policies that I really like, from a standpoint of, if I meet all your criteria and I prove it, and you approve that I approve all of your criteria for building a home here, then I have the right to do it. And you can't keep coming back to me and saying that there's more regulation, more fees, more things that I have to pay you. It's like, if I meet your criteria, then I can build. And I like that approach because one has a regulatory aspect, which I think is important, but not an overreach.
Yeah, what you said there, it took me back to the interview I did with Jim Tobin, the president of National Association of Builders. And one of the reasons, or many, to be a member of the association is what they do for lobbying. Like, they're a lobby group, and they're out front of Congress. And he said, builders don't realize that government's coming. They're coming for you, whether you like it or not. They are coming. And it took me back to what Reagan said, those famous 9 words, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. And to your point, here's the policy, here's what we want to do. And by the way, we're putting in more red tape. And the one thing that Jim said was, just get out of the way and let builders do what they do, which is build. Do you ever find yourself getting just totally frustrated? Because from where you are, you get to see builders, you get to see governance, you get to see what's happening politically. Do you ever just want to throw up your hands and say, guys, look, here's how you put the pieces together, and we can all create a game that we can all have fun at?
I'm not a fan of wholesale deregulation. I'm not. I think that we need to keep homes safe. We need to keep homes, in terms of their environmental impact, their footprint, as efficient and good as possible. The built environment, by definition, is going to cause some environmental impact, but let's keep it as moderate as we can, knowing that we still are going to build, knowing that we still need homes for folks. I think so. I'm not into this like big overreach of just get out of the way. I think the best solutions are ones, as I said earlier, where everybody comes together and says, okay, what's the problem? How do we solve it? What's in the way? And I think builders have learned, unfortunately, that they typically have an adversarial relationship with government at a local level or state level. And I think that they feel powerless. But I will say that the examples that we've held up to the industry through our media channels are those that are working. Builders that have successfully negotiated or collaborated with local officials to get homes built, to regulate properly at a level that protects everybody and still allows them to build. And it's also like, look, I mean, regulations are one thing, and they're a big part of it, but we also have a labor issue. We can't get people to build homes. We don't have the people that we used to before the Great Recession to build homes. They left the industry. We just don't have the numbers anymore. And I think that if we're going to start looking at housing supply, you have to look at labor, and you have to look at immigration, and you have to look at things like offsite construction, factory built construction, where you're using fewer people in a controlled environment that can punch out walls and floors and roof systems much faster and much better than the talent that we currently have in the field. And if you're not willing to look at all of that and look at it comprehensively, then you're not going to solve the problem. Because if you're just looking at regulation, that's a big part, but it's not the only issue.
From where you're sitting, so if I look at California as the extreme, you can't buy Coke from a vending machine without a permit. Taking that to the far extreme, is there anyone, let's say city, municipality, state, that you've seen that they've just got it right? They've dialed it in. They've got this beautiful kumbaya relationship with the builder, and they're getting shit done. Is there any one shining example that you can point to?
I wish I could come off the top of my head and say it's X. I think when you look at where, um, yeah, I mean, I probably someplace like the Treasure Valley in Boise. I mean, that comes to mind only because I know builders are going there because there is far less oversight. There's still oversight. They still have to be licensed. There's still a permit process, but land use there is a lot freer. I think I don't know what building code version Boise or the Treasure Valley or those municipalities use, but I'm sure it's at least the 2018 or 2021 IECC or IRC. So maybe they don't want the 2024, but they're building at a higher level than they were 15, 20, 30 years ago for sure. So I think that when you look at markets that are markets in Texas, I think even the bigger markets they're building a lot of homes, and that's allowing builders to build there. I think when you look at certainly California, where I am in Oregon, Washington, I think you could argue overreach for sure, and that process could be more efficient. But you got to look at California and go, well, it's still a place where people still flock to live. They still feel like it's a place they want to be. And so you've got to figure out, and I'm sure there's communities within California that have figured out to some degree how to work together. This is all a local issue. Now, there are national things we can do, but honestly, even at the state level, unless the state controls a lot of stuff like Oregon does, but if you had, and California does too, but if you could break it down to a local level. I was listening to a panel discussion with Democratic gubernatorial candidates in California talking specifically about housing. And the mayor of San Jose brought up how he and his administration had worked with builders and the regulatory offices in that city to loosen up some things and be much more collaborative in delivering housing for San Jose. But he wants to take that model to the state. So, obviously, I think things are happening in some markets, even in California. But I do think that it's generations of adversary. It's not going to turn around that quickly.
Yeah. The pressure that builders are under, there's the affordability issue, trying to build something people can afford, interest rates, there's no shortage of dragons hiding in the weeds. How about data centers? How's that impacting what's happening in the landscape? Because they're coming in wanting big swaths of land. There's water that they need, energy that they need. Is that going to be a competition to builders down the road, do you think?
100%. Yeah, I think communities are starting to recognize that. Somebody will come in and want a data center somewhere, and they're like, "Well, wait a minute." And I think they're looking at it much more closely than they did even 6 months, a year ago, 2 years ago, because it was like, "Oh, this big place is coming in, and it's gonna, this is great. This is great for the community." And they're kind of learning that from a resource standpoint, they suck a lot of resources out. The grid or the infrastructure for water, especially, is just not keeping up. Can't keep up. So those are costs that they have to figure out a way to pay for, to upgrade if they can. And also, yeah, the land issue and taking away land that could be for housing that they may desperately need. So I think that I definitely think it's got a negative impact, and I think that industry is moving at a breakneck pace that isn't sustainable. I don't think. I mean, I have nothing to back that up except that it's just on a rocket ship, and every rocket ship runs out of fuel at some point. I definitely think it's an impact on housing. I think it's an impact on communities. I think it's an impact on resources for sure, negatively.
Let's talk about trends. Do you see anything in the build type of home? You mentioned modular. There's 3D printed. Are you seeing anything that's really starting to come out as a champion, or are we at the point now because of AI and how technology is changing, that it's kind of like the wild, wild west. There are so many things that are going to be coming out in the future.
Well, yeah, I can't say that there's one that is predominantly taking the lead. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who knows the modular industry well, the modular and manufactured industry, which are two different segments of similar types of building. And he was saying, look, the problem is these guys compete with themselves. They compete among each other, not competing against the on-site builder, not competing against the stick building industry. They're competing against each other, which is just insane. They should be going after the stick build industry and raising all boats in the modular side to gain market share. I was saying this 2 or 3 years ago when we were coming out of the pandemic and we were looking at pressures of, again, labor and affordability and just all of the headwinds that housing was facing, interest rates rising, things like that. And it's like, not able to produce as many housing, the supply gap getting wider. And I was thinking, Offsite's got to make a move here. This is kind of where these are the perfect conditions for Offsite, whether it's pre-cut construction or pre-cut framing, or it's panelization, or it's modular or manufactured, whatever. It's like it's got to make a move, and it hasn't. It just hasn't, and that's frustrating for someone who I do respect those guys, and I think people point to the failures of a Katera or an Integra or a Villa, not a Villa. I'm sorry, Villa. I don't want to say that. I know Villa well, and they're great, but Vive and some other ones that have kind of come and gone. Those aren't. It's easy to hold those up as failures, but it's also learning experiences. And I think there's a lot of companies, there's hundreds of plants out there that are putting together, modules that could be used for housing. But I also like the fact that there's a lot of innovation here, whether it's 3D, whether it's shipping containers, whether it's something straw bale even. I mean, whatever. If you can find a way to build a home that you like, that is going to satisfy the market or satisfy a buyer or satisfy you, then have at it. I think it's all good as long as it's safe and healthy. Then I think we need housing, and wherever it comes from, we should get it.
We haven't touched on labor, which seems like a third rail topic, and getting more people into the trades. I've got my philosophy on this. I want to hear yours. What's if you were the king of Oz? We pull back the curtain. There you are. On your machine. What would you do? How would you get more people interested in getting into the trades?
Well, I think that's a really difficult thing, and I go back and forth, and I look at programs that are educating kids, exposing kids, and we're talking about middle school to high school kids, exposing them to the construction, whether it's some sort of an event where they just kind of let them hammer nails and saw wood or whatever, just put tools in their hand and let them kind of experience that, which I think is impactful, frankly. But I think an expectation to refill the labor pool for construction for a number of reasons is not realistic. I think that we should continue to try. We should continue to get people, young people, into the industry and show them that it's a viable career move, that it's hard work, but it's also entrepreneurial and it's also paying well. I think that those things aren't messaged either well enough or enough, because it's true. But you're fighting against an infrastructure that's been going on for now 30 plus years of college is the only way to go. They've stigmatized construction as a career, and you're seeing the one byproduct of that, which is student loan debt, which is not great and is hindering housing affordability because people just can't afford to buy because they got all this debt that they can't get under or can't get out of. So I think, again, you have to look at how we build more efficiently with the people that we have. And that is, to me, Offsite. And there's technology there, and that should attract people who are looking to get into construction. It's like, look, you can work in a factory and it's all automated, and it's not something where you've got to go out to a job site when it's, 10 degrees and the wind's blowing and you got to, hammer a joist in place. And that's not necessarily what you have to do. So I think that, and you can do plumbing in there, you can do electricity, and you can do, insulation, all of the systems that you might get into, you can do there. I just think, again, it's not a realistic expectation that we're going to refill the pool to where we were 20 years ago, but we can continue to try and continue to refill at a pace that we can and get better at it. But I think we have to look at how do we utilize the labor that we have and are probably going to have without much of an increase in numbers to still deliver the homes that we need.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like the forestry industry. They cut down trees, but immediately after they're planting. And I think the same is true of the labor market. We got to start somewhere. And for me, it's at the high school level. And introducing kids to the fact that this is a noble trade. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. But then there's income, there's stability to be had as a result of it. I think the problem is they don't even know that's a viable option because it's not introduced. And there's still that stigma attached to the construction. There's a gal that I know out of Colorado, Renee Zentz, and she's helped initiate a program at the high school level where they come in, and that becomes part of the curriculum if they, elect to take it. And by the time they graduate, they're forces in nature to be reckoned with, and there's a job waiting for them.
Right.
And I think that's a fascinating way to start. But again, to your point, yeah, we can't just fill that immediately, but we got to start somewhere. We haven't touched on technology, and I can see the airport, as Mike Rowe would say, we're on approach. If he can use it, so can I. AI, are there any cool apps that you've stumbled across that you think are going to be game changers? That are
I get probably 5 emails a day from somebody who's got an AI app that they that for the industry that they're trying to get me to cover. It's definitely a hot market. I will say this: it's not so much an app; it's a book. It's called AI for Residential Construction. It's by a woman named Grace Mace. She's an architect, builder, and tech person. She kind of, through school, did a dual tech architecture type of track. And she wrote this book. It came out first part of this year. We were working on a story about AI and labor because I hadn't seen a lot of AI that was designed or to be something that would help production, which I was, again, back to a lot of the conversation we've had about the producing more homes and what's in the way and all of that. And I think that I've got a couple of ones that I've come across. Forge is one. They have been able to consolidate code language and use it to kind of synthesize code language in a municipal level so that builders can go in and say, okay, what's expected of me when I cross county lines? What does that county expect? How do I prepare for that? How do I plan for that? That's a really helpful, tremendously helpful tool that AI is doing. And then we have ARCS, which is a company that has synthesized land deals down from months of legwork to kind of figure out if a piece of land is worth investing in and building on to mere minutes, frankly. And the accuracy is 90+%. It's amazing what those guys do. And there's a lot of them like that. And I look for ones that are really helping industry, and from an industry standpoint, not just necessarily a builder standpoint or just kind of the hot new thing that they think they should do. Obviously, again, we just finished our top 200 and we asked them in that survey, what technology what innovations are you following? And the top 4 are digital sales and marketing tools, digital design tools, digital construction documentation, and business software. Those are the top 4. So that they're focused on that, and they're going after it. But anyway, back to Grace's book. It's just She has case studies from builders who have used it. She lays it out very, very simply, and I think she and I talked about this for the story, and it's builders just don't know where to start, and I think it's really, what's your pinch point? Figure out what your pinch point is. There's definitely something for AI for that, but if you're looking at production specifically, then there's apps that will regulate or tell you how your subs are performing, whether there's some weather coming and you need to reschedule some work. I mean, just all of the things that come flying at a builder in terms of trying to produce or build a house. It's like it synthesizes all of that so that you can say, okay, now I can do the job of scheduling these people or talking to the sub to get better, or talking to the supplier about just in time, or whatever it is. You can take action. It's doing the legwork to tell you what the data is saying, and then you can take action from that, which I think is the most helpful thing that AI can do in any aspect of an operation.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here, Rich. Is there anything that I've missed that you want to touch on?
Boy, I don't think so. This has been terrific. This has been very comprehensive. I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully it was insightful and helpful. But
oh no, we're not done yet, man.
Okay,
no, I'm not
all
letting
right.
you off the
Well,
hook yet.
no,
Yeah.
It's funny because
But I appreciate the accolades. Keep them coming. I can use a pat on the back anytime.
It's a little bit. I don't know what I know. This industry has been terrific to me. It's sustained me and my family for almost 40 years, in and out of it occasionally, but all kind of part of the same big world of construction and housing and building and innovation. Yeah, it's kind of surprising when I get asked a question and I somehow have the answer. And I love it both that I do and also when I don't. And it gives me an opportunity to go find the answer, which is the journalist in me, to kind of go and dig it up and let's come up with a better answer than what you came up with.
I've got a confession to make. When I was teaching video marketing to realtors, when I would start off the day by telling what we're going to do, I said, if there's no such thing as a stupid question, and I asked it, have you heard that expression? Oh, yeah. Well, the stupid question is the one that you didn't ask when you had the opportunity to ask it.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm so damn good at what I do that if I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you something that you'll believe anyway. So ask away. Right? This next part, I call it rapid fire.
Sure.
And I'm just going to ask you a series of questions. Don't think about it. Just fill in the blank when I'm done.
Yep.
Buckled up and ready?
Ready. Let's go.
All right. After covering builders for decades, the companies that consistently outperform everyone else usually
have a great culture.
One mistake you see builders repeat over and over again, regardless of a market cycle, is
doing the same thing again.
The builders who will struggle most over the next 10 years are the ones who
don't embrace technology and innovation.
Okay. The biggest disconnect between what builders think buyers want versus what buyers actually want is,
I think, the level of finish, the level of upgrade.
If you could give every builder in America one brutally honest piece of advice, it would be
keep moving forward. Don't
okay, lane change. This next part will be easy for you.
Okay.
When I finally get that rare hour to completely relax with myself, I enjoy
writing.
Right. Okay. The place that helps me think the most clearly is
my backyard.
Okay. As a writer, you'll appreciate this. A book or movie quote that stayed with me longer than expected is
take the gun, leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Okay. I got to ask, where's that from?
That's from The Godfather. That's my favorite movie. And I quoted it incorrectly, which is kind of ironic, but it's the only one I could come up with because it's just it sticks with me all the time. There's tons of them, man. My wife, I'll quote a movie and she'll be like, what is that? So yeah, go ahead.
All right. A couple more and we're done here.
Sure.
When people get to know me, they're really surprised that I
spent the better part of 4 years in Saudi Arabia.
Wow, that's pretty cool. My friend, I want to thank you again for taking time out. Once more, I'm going to ask, is there anything that we've missed that you want to touch on?
No, I don't think so. That was a great kind of rapid fire thing to end it. I like that. I don't think I did very well, but I like it. And it got me thinking. So thank you.
You're still standing, man. I don't see any blood or bruising.
No,
so I think you came through okay.
I think I'm okay. Yeah, thank you.
Let's end it this way, Rich. I'm going to say to be continued because there's so much that you're discovering every day, every week. And I want to be able to tap into that resource of yours. So with your permission, definitely want to stay in touch. And as I said, to be continued, do another part 2, 3, 4, whatever that number is.
I would love it. Please do.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.